In order to win globally, we really have to think globally. And in order to do that is really to get to the core of the problems that you're trying to solve in the countries in which you're operating.
Welcome to the Issuer Academy, Paymentology's podcast to innovate, scale, and provide impact. I'm your host, Merusha Naidu. If you're a fintech professional, banking leader, or an innovator in the digital payment space, you're in the right place. Here, we deep dive into the challenges and triumphs of launching next-generation card programs, from virtual cards and digital wallets to cross-border FX solutions. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Issuer Academy. I'm your host, Merusha Naidu, and today's episode is a global tour of how local payments are evolving and why regional realities can no longer be treated as a side note in global card strategies. In digital payments, success doesn't come from copying and pasting across markets. It comes from understanding what makes each region tick and designing accordingly. Joining me today are Paymentology leaders who live and breathe these differences every day. We'll be going deep into UK, Europe, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, and Asia Pacific. Joining me today, we have Minha, the Regional Director for APAC, Julie Sutton, Regional Director for Europe, Nacho Gironella, Head of Sales for Europe, Alejandro Del Rio, Regional Director for Latin America, and Nauman Hassan, Regional Director in the Middle East. Welcome, team. It's great to have you.
Good to be here.
Now, before we dive into the regional stories, let's set the stage with someone who oversees the bigger picture. Anna Porra, our Chief Revenue Officer. Anna, you got a front row seat into how different markets approach issuing, often with wildly different needs and timelines. When you look across all of these regions, what's the biggest opportunity for localization and who really gets localization right? And I'm going to add another one onto that. What is the cost when they don't?
Merusha, the reality is that being global and scaling fast is actually really, really dependent on being locally fluent. You've got to be so acute to the culture in the countries that you operate in, the regulation and the problems that each individual cardholders are actually experiencing within those countries. To bring it to life, localization has many different layers. You can start from the regulation. There's certain countries where the regulator might require you to build on soil. You might have to have your HSMs, your data centers. You might be required to connect to the domestic schemes such as MADA. You've also then got to think about the real product requirements and problems. In Mexico, we know that credit comes with its own interest calculations that you need to be aware of. And ultimately, you've also got to understand how cardholders actually use their cards. We know that in South Africa, often cardholders receive their salary payments on their cards and then immediately go and take the salaries out of the ATMs. And if that isn't working, then some people might not be able to buy their groceries for the week. So actually, localization is at the core of being able to be successful and scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've all seen that one of the beauties of Paymentology is you can all gain from each other's experience. And that's a really unique thing that I think not many processes or people in payments actually get that kind of visibility and view. I want to start off now with a bit of an icebreaker, right? What's exciting in your regions right now? Everyone says localization matters, but let's hear what that actually means on the ground. What's the one thing in your region right now that genuinely excites you? Whether it's a regulatory change, customer behavior, technology innovation, we want to hear it all. Minha, I'm going to start with you.
Well, is my region, that one thing exciting is the strong growth super app, right? So the technology platform demonstrate that, embedded finance into everyday lifestyle, So you see that, lots of super app like Alipay, WeChat, we heard a lot about that, Gojek, Grab. And closer to home, where in Southeast Asia, True Money, Thailand, GCash in the Philippines, right? So they provide, everything from bill, insurance, payment, credit, saving into the lifestyle app, right? So that actually cater to meet a user need and contact, from daily usage to lifestyle, and that help expand access to finance tremendously.
I think the one thing that excites me about APAC as well is they've gone through that evolution of hyper personalization. And now it's become, you have a payment mechanism, but it's always linked to loyalty and it's linked to rewards. And it's just, I find payments in APAC fun. Like all of the fintechs and digital banks have managed to make it really, really fun. Alejandro, over to you. So going from east to west.
East to west. Well, for Latin America, I would say there's quite interesting things happening in Latin America. I would say, first of all, is we're finally looking after the underbanked and the unbanked people, which is great. This is on mainly through all these new banks, all digital banks, what is happening. We've seen all these fintechs that have evolved to APACs now, and now they're bank licensed, and they even have more accounts than the traditional banks. We have, it's working very good, is the regulators, how they change, how they're evolving, how they're more open to new processes, to new kind of way of doing business. We were talking about Asia. We look after Asia because we benchmark with Asia. We know that they've done it before. We try to copy the best practices. One of those best practices is how to get your clients happy. How do you bring them in fast and secure?
Absolutely love it. And I think there's so many commonalities between APAC and LAC, and I'm really excited to deep dive into that, further on in our discussion. So thank you for raising. Now I'm going over to you, the Middle East.
So I think the Middle East is going through that fintech moment. It's not just about the cool apps. I would say the regulators, the banks, and the fintechs are reinventing or redefining the fashion in which the money moves. Furthermore, in my opinion, the soil is very fertile because a lot of investments are coming in. The center of gravity is shifting, in my opinion, from the West to especially Saudi and UAE. I would say, above all, I think there's a lot of effort by the governments to diversify the economy. And that really is playing a big role because from a traditional natural resources, money being pumped, foreign entities are being encouraged to invest in the region. And that's really, really appealing. And that's something that excites us all.
Yeah. And I love that we're seeing a lot of reinvention and innovation coming out of the Middle East. I think Seamless Saudi is like the most exciting event we go to. So absolutely. Julie, want to come over to the UK, more emerged, slightly different. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think similarly to Minhar, actually, embedded finance for me is a real area of growth. There's 20% annual growth expected over the next 5 years. So I still think there's plenty for UK and European fintechs to go after, actually. I think it's not necessarily about the financial products, but I think it's about the use cases. And I just wanted to give a personal example. So I went to pick up my car after it being serviced, and I was presented with a £600 bill, as you do, and they actually offered me credit at that point. So that just shows you how embedded finance is really seeping into everyday lives. So I think, these kind of smarter fintechs, more of an innovative fintechs can really leverage that. So that's exciting to see.
I love that they're taking a very common pain point and finding solutions for it. Yeah. I think that's what makes payments fun, right? You solve people's problems and make their lives better.
Yeah.
Nacho, I'd love to get the European perspective from you. What are you seeing that excites you?
Yeah. Well, for me, something very exciting is the liberation of the NFC inside the Apple devices, because I think it will transform many businesses and how we interact when we pay. Because at the end, it's not only that you would be able to pay directly from the issuer's app, but you can also receive payments. So now a phone, of course, it has liberated that many small and medium enterprises can use their own phone to accept payments through Apple, which before you couldn't. So I think it's going to be a big change for Europe.
And that is so exciting. And I would love to we need a whole session on that, because SME is largest underserved market, right? Now you're making safer tokenization available to everyone by this, regulatory change. So it's just, again, embedding and expanding, optionality for those SMEs. Fantastic point. I want to jump in on something that's really exciting me about the African market. I think we've always seen remittance as key to driving the continent. But what we're now seeing is safe remittance. And we're seeing the likes of Makuru, Hello Pesa really driving these initiatives. I think for Africa, that's a really, really exciting moment. And the other is the access to credit. We're seeing, again, innovative game changers like Time Bank, who are now saying, look, we're not going to offer full-scale credit, but we're going to start with an easy buy now, pay later within more time. And I think this is really just opening up the African continent again and saying, how do we create real financial inclusion, real, inclusion for everyone? So it's just fantastic what's happening across all of these regions. And thanks for the...
And I love that actually, Merusha, because you talk about credit and in slightly different ways, but credit is really a focus across many of our regions. We're seeing a lot of the interest over in Mexico. You just talked about how we can try and access and provide credit to the underserved in Africa, but we're also seeing a lot of interest over in APAC as well. So while it's localized, there are some themes that you can take and have a look at across the different regions as well.
Absolutely. And credit is not just about old school revolving credit. It's evolved to a point where it's like simple BNPL, installments, revolving credit. There's so many variations which again create real inclusion.
Yes. And I think that you add into that, right, that also help educate, consumer user with like financial literacy. Yes, learning how to use credit is that how you start learning about financial literacy. And
absolutely. Now, emerging markets have shared patterns, like you just said, Anna. We've just heard what's lighting up in each region, but sometimes the biggest insight comes from looking across markets and not just within them. Because while every region is different, many emerging markets follow the same arcs, just at different speeds. For example, LAC today is very much like APAC was 5 years ago. African mobile payments is now evolving across the Middle East, across even certain markets in Europe. So let's explore what it means to really learn across different regions. Minha, again, I'm going to start with you. What lessons from APAC would you pass on to other emerging markets like Latin America, Africa?
I would say that, having, open inclusion infrastructure is a reason for adoption, things like that. Like one example is that the real-time payment in APAC is big and is successful, right? For instance, if you look at Singapore Fast and Pay Now or Thailand Prompt Pay, become like something like, it actually is happen every day. And it's convenient, it's sticky. What it does is that it allow, a real-time payment, people using it for everyday life from grocery, like transportation to splitting bills, saving and things like that, right? And that it scale up very fast, and it will like build from niche to nationwide in no time, right? And it will build not only for a bank, but it builds for an ecosystem, right? So everyone can participate, and now non-bank and also fintechs also participate in. So that's what I meant by open infrastructure is a reason for scale.
And what's so interesting is when Prompt Pay started, the uptake was minimal. People were so scared of it. And we're seeing something so similar in LAC, right? With the new local kind of instant payment mechanisms, customers are going through that same evolution of saying, we're very nervous. But when we look 5 years down the line, actually, people have accepted Prompt Pay and it has become part of their everyday lives.
And not only that, other countries also adopt, so you also have similar thing in Vietnam or in other market where it's convenient, it's fast. And that change the people, like the user, behavior that help them with like reaching the gap of, from a society from cash is king to electronic payment. It evolved the industry and the markets. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, I want to move over to the Middle East because MENA has leapfrogged in areas like digital ID and instant payments as well. Are there areas you think that other regions could learn from the Middle East?
So first of all, obviously, just to understand what tech is in this new era, it's not just an enabler, but I think it's the brand, it's the experience, and moreover, it's the proposition, right? So you have to embrace technology. That's important. And I think the second important thing is understand the market better. Middle East is diversified. It has a lot of expatriates, a lot of, I would say, diversification in terms of high net worth individuals to all the way to the blue collar workers. You understand your market, you bring shopping closer, because it's a very highly penetrative market as well in terms of the smartphones. So you provide them the tools, the mechanism through which they can seamlessly, transact, securely transact. This is what I always say, that speed is the baseline, flexibility is the oxygen, and data is the superpower. So that's what I can say. Understand the market, embrace the technology. Don't try to build everything on your own. Try to build what is necessary locally and then connect to the rest. And that's how you will be successful. But most importantly, be aware of the compliance, because you can thrive whenever you strike the balance between technology and compliance.
Yeah.
So that's the secret.
Absolutely. And I think so many key things to dive into this. So firstly, compliance, absolutely. I think what's amazing in the Middle East is the regulators get involved and want to create better customer experiences, which is fantastic. But it's also, you also touched on a very good point, which is when to build and when to buy. And I think in the Middle East, it's a region where fintechs and banks have really been good at working through that thought process, because they said, look, actually, we want to work with best-in-class processes, core banking, KYC providers. We don't have to touch that. That doesn't involve our customer experience. We want to own the customer experience and make that great. But hey, I will work with best-in-class. And that's what I think every other region can learn from as well, because in many markets, I remember in APAC, when we started there 15 years ago, everyone wanted to build everything. It was like, you just can't do it. You're looking at a 24-month roadmap. If you do, that's nuts, right?
In fact, we're to a similar thing. We're actually seeing quite a lot of proliferation of banking as a service providers in the Middle East. It's often by players who have done it before the hard way and realize how complex and difficult it is. And so they're pulling together the infrastructure to allow new fintechs to go to market a lot quicker.
Absolutely. Alejandro, let's look at LAC. Has there been a chance to leapfrog and not follow? When you look at, what APAC has done and what Europe has done, and all of the different mechanisms that we have in those markets, what has LAC brought to this?
That's a great question, Merusha, because many things has happened in Latin America. First of all, and this is the way you start the conversation, is localization. Localization is key, and it's amazing, right? We have over 70 people working in LAC. So what does that mean? That we know the market. We know what the regulations need for each country. And that's what it's very important. You need to know what the market is. Like you were saying now, you need to know the regulator. You need to work with compliance. You need to work with the schemes. And obviously, you need to think about the end user. Because when you had all these components together, you can build smarter things, easier things. And obviously, for example, I'm going to say Mexico. Mexico installments, buy now, pay later, it's been 20 years. I was just talking with Nach about that. So it's been there for 20 years. So how can we put it now in the new technology? Because technology evolves every day. And that's something that it's really expanding its use. Embedded finance. In Latin America, everything is happening, and it's happening fast. So we're lucky to have Asia, the Middle East, Europe, that have done this before, and we're learning from them. So we need to make it fast.
Absolutely. And then it was a stat, LAC is the fastest growing region globally, right? And we're seeing it every single day, the hunger that's coming from Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, Colombia, Peru, Argentina now, opening up their regulations. Like, there's so much coming out of LAC. And Nacho, you have a lot of experience in LAC.
I was going to say, because the amount of challenges that LAC has as a region makes a lot of entrepreneurs want to solve those challenges. And by solving those challenges, they're sophisticating the payment way of doing things. BNPL is a clear one. So I think that from the European standpoint, we should learn a lot from emerging markets. In other cases, I think that in many other cases, probably APAC, I don't know it as well as LAC, but entities grew up without this legacy weight. And so we could learn a lot in Europe about speed, scalability, all this burden that Europeans, that we have, no? Because we think that we're doing great things in payments, but I do think that in APAC, in LAC, in other parts of the world, in Africa, they are doing incredible things. I mean, look at the new banks, the Mercados Pagos, the Rapid, the Go Times. I mean, so we should learn a lot about them. Yeah.
I just have a point to tap here. You have mentioned a few banks. So basically, you cannot build the banks of the future with technology and even culture or people
Yes.
of yesterday. That's important. And that's where embracement of technology.
Even the traditional buyers, now they're starting to look the underbank and the unback because they realize there's a huge opportunity out there.
Well, and some are starting to knock and say, hey, like we were talking about, build it or
Build or buy.
build or buy. Let's partner, because now they want, if you want to go fast, you need a partner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is really when we talk about leapfrogging, right? We talk about, I mean, Myanmar is a really good example. Absolutely closed market. All of a sudden, overnight, went to a 98% penetration rate of smartphones. They never had point-of-sale terminals that did chip and pin and POS, mag, stripe. They literally went straight to contactless, right? And when we look at leapfrogging, it is happening in so many amazing ways across Africa, across LAC, because Nacho, you're right, we don't have the legacy tech. But what I want to understand, and Julie, I'm going to bring you in here. When you think about, from all of the things that we're hearing here, where do you think the UK, when it comes to fintechs and banks, where can they learn from places like LAC and APAC?
And I think it's a great point, and Nacho touched on this as well, but I think it's finding that balance between innovation, moving costs, but also regulation, and not letting regulation stifle, because regulation is different in every region, in every country, and in some cases. That doesn't mean that UK fintech should be any less innovative. But I also think what's really interesting, and we spoke about this in terms of market volatility, and actually sometimes using that challenge or adversity in a particular market to drive innovation and creativity. And I think Dora is a really, really good example of that, where they were able to very quickly develop a solution for Mexicans to hold USD. So I think, there's definitely still opportunity, but we can absolutely learn from other regions for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we look across Europe, and I know Nacho, Julie, the two of you, when you look across Europe, we still see emerging markets across Europe. I mean, Anna, you're seeing this as well, right?
Emerging markets across Europe,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you just see at times the opportunity to innovate within those. We tend to have also conversation with some of the more traditional banks actually now looking to find ways to quickly launch some Revolut-like propositions into the market. And that is innovation, because it's allowing banks that have been growing with particular as legacy systems now that can still access and deliver new solutions and opportunities within the market really quickly.
Absolutely. I mean, Nacho, you were having a discussion about Germany the other day, right? And they were saying, look, the cash percentage is still extremely high.
Correct. So there's still many things to do there. I mean, there are many places. I was 2 weeks ago, I think I was there, and of course I don't carry cash. So I wanted to pay with card, and I couldn't have dinner because they wouldn't accept. I mean, I went to a restaurant, no. I went to another one, no. So at the end I had to go to an ATM and withdraw cash, which is crazy.
Yeah. Well, that just creates opportunity for all of us, right?
Yes, it does.
I want to move now to smarter users, smarter products. Across regions, one thing is clear. People are getting smarter about money. Financial education is improving. Digital access is widening. But let's be honest, financial inclusion isn't a given everywhere. More people are coming into the financial system for the very first time, and others are demanding more from it. So the challenge isn't just inclusion, it's about empowerment. How are we designing payment products that meet people where they are and actually help them to move forward? And I think what I'd like to probably start on here is Africa. When we look at real financial inclusion does not happen without financial literacy, right? It's only once you increase financial literacy do you actually create real inclusion. And what we're seeing now evolve, and let's take M-Pesa as an example. Largest mobile wallet globally, everybody knows M-Pesa. They were really game changers when it came to creating inclusion by giving just their mobile money customers an account. Somewhere where they could say, I just want to be able to save some money. I want to be able to get paid not in cash, because I don't want to get robbed at the end of the week when I get paid, right? And so what they did really, really well was start to educate customers around how do you spend? How do you send? What is fraud? Don't share your PIN, right? And it really is as simple as that. So, Judy, let's start off with you and let's start with more emerging. In the UK, we often talk about being ahead in fintech. But are there blind spots when it comes to financial inclusion, especially compared to how, it's scaling across emerging markets?
Yeah, I think, we're absolutely innovators and leaders in many senses, but we still have over 1 million people in the UK that don't have a bank account. So that says to me there is a real gap in innovation in this space. I think fintechs often build for digital sort of natives, smartphones, etc. But there are still many people that don't fit that mold. So I think, we have the infrastructure, we have open APIs, real-time payments, and I think now we just need that investment and creativity. But I think one thing that is actually really positive is now the UK government is even developing their national financial inclusion strategy. So this is now happening at a policy level. So I think this is where we can see a real change.
Yeah. And that's such an interesting point, because if the UK government is setting up an entity to look at inclusion, clearly it's not just a perception, it's the reality on the ground, right? Nacho, let's now look across Europe. Are digital banks succeeding more by simplifying their offering or by layering more intelligent products?
Yeah, well, I think it's either or, no? I think that first you need to earn to be innovative.
Yeah.
So at first you need to solve the simple basic things, no? Like, I don't know, Revolut nailed FX, bank into this nailed onboarding, no? Bank, the UX, it's perfect. So, okay, now that you've done that, now you can be innovative and have smart solutions and do AI and do cryptos, stable coins, whatever you want. Then you have smart solutions, no? But somebody that wants to pay the rent, you cannot go down with 97 smart options to do it, no? So I think it's both worlds. First, you start by simplifying, doing the basics, doing it very good, and then you bring the smart solutions.
Exactly. Create that baseline and then grow from there, right? Alejandro and Alessi, how is rising digital confidence changing what users expect from their card or wallet?
Like I was saying, before you need a debit card, it was it. Go to an ATM, we do everything, exposed to danger, it didn't to danger, Now you're looking at these super apps, dollar apps, albos, they're evolving, they change it. And what they're doing is trying to educate the consumers that how to have a great experience, how it's easy to do payments. So what I was trying with this ecosystem, it's we need to work together as a processor, with the schemes, with the regulators, with the local entities, with the local risk, which is very important, to make payments easy and fun. I said about Albo. Albo does amazing things. Albo was one of the first, and we were talking about this yesterday, Albo was one of the first fintech. It has evolved to a new one. They were just a debit card. Now you go into that, you can do everything with that. Yeah. You can do pretty much everything you need, everywhere you want, and it's evolving, it's growing, and it's a great example of how technology has helped them to become a new to become a better option for everybody out there, like Dorala. Well, same way.
You kind of become partners to their customers, right? Because they built a really strong foundation, created the literacy, and then built on top of that, right? Now you have really loyal customers who say, they're fulfilling all of my financial needs and I feel safe and I trust them.
Exactly what you were saying. You started saying, we are empowering the users to actually use their money.
Yeah. And this is how you succeed in emerging markets. Minha, I want to look at APAC. Are you seeing the demand for more user control, like self-service, budgeting tools, or transparency? Because these also talk to customer control.
Definitely. The consumer in APAC, now become like very smart user, right? And, as a young population, they have access to, like information as well as, it's the rise of mobile phone, internet access, giving them a lot of more knowledge, right? And so you see that, that those standard, like nowadays that, the standard features are like, like spend alert or budgeting or like, like freeze your card, open your card and your app, it become very standard in Southeast Asia, right? And then you see that, and like satellite market where traditionally, cash is king is now speed up the adoption in electronic payment, so they, and the reason for that, because, their confidence is growing bigger and bigger. And that, and when the adoption in card users is more, the demand is more, they want more control, and they feel that, when they have the empowerment from their bank, from the fintech partner for them to play with what they can do, so that, also speed up and, the card usage as well, so yeah. So we see that definitely, right? And like I can give you some example, like in Hong Kong, when Marks offer the gold bucket, right? So that is, their user love it, and they show that, how one can do when like a bank focus on empowerment, not only transaction alone, right? Or like you said, like in Singapore nowadays, like financial wellness become is in every, mainstream banking app, or in Australia, we have neobank like apps, so leading with, financial analytics and design. So, like you said, like, so now it's key is about, and also, the consumer and user feel like they want to have things in control, right? And then that also the bank, like for example, that help them protect fraud when they are managing their transaction, right? So I think the game here is just about, it's no longer about what, but it's about who win is the one who know how to use technology to give the end user control and confidence.
Absolutely. And I think that end user experience has evolved. And, if we talk about where, APAC was 10 years ago, LAC, the catching up. But now we're seeing the APAC user is not stopping. They're continuing to evolve. We see greater advances in crypto, great reasons for, customers saying, I want to have greater control. I want to have a hybrid card with multiple accounts, multi-currency, but everything linked together, and I need to have full control across the board. It's just incredible, really.
Winning customer by who have the product that cater to their need and make them feel they're in control more. Yeah.
Now, I want to touch on MENA. MENA's home to, like you said just now, a very large migrant expat population. How do you build inclusive products that work across income levels, nationalities, but also different levels of, financial literacy?
Before I answer that question, one thing is important because I've been hearing a lot of embedded finance, inclusive. So 3 words I would say. So inclusive banking, intentional disruption, and creative chaos. That's what I say Middle East is all about. Look, it's a land of dreamers, first of all. So again, we have to look at the population, the masses. We have to look at the schemes. The visions are incredibly ambitious. Vision 2030 Saudi Arabia. You have to look at the local scheme, Javon, coming up in UAE. You have to ensure that the infrastructure is properly laid. There are so many options, so many products. For example, fuel cards. Then there is a regulation for payroll cards, WPS, waste protection systems, and some stats to back it up. I mean, the remittance that is being flown out of Middle East to from Middle East to the low or medium income countries, it was hitting around $690 billion. Can you imagine that? So there's a lot of room for innovation. There's a lot of room for everyone to play their role in providing, like Minha said, transparency, control, security, ease to the consumer to transact. So, like I said, there are products already in the country. You just have to ensure you use the products, understand the consumers, built with a very compliant approach, built with a very open-ended approach, embrace technology, and yeah, succeed. Keep up with the hunger, be ambitious, and I would say that's the way to success.
Absolutely. I must say, we could go on for hours and hours because it's so interesting, and I was so excited that we could actually have these conversations. But unfortunately, Anna, we have to get to the final question. You've heard insights from across the globe, from infrastructure and trust to regulation and product design. What's the one mindset shift you believe global fintech players and leaders need to adopt today if they want to truly innovate and thrive tomorrow.
Yeah, and it's been great listening to the team actually talk through all of the experiences and the innovation that's happening in their local countries and regions. And I think what that really brings is, circling back to what we started off with, that in order to win globally, you really have to think globally. And in order to do that is really to get to the core of the problems that you're trying to solve in the countries in which you're operating in.
And that's so, so important. And I cannot stress that enough. Understanding the pain points on the ground, looking at localization from every aspect, holistically looking at localization. And I think one thing we always say on the podcast is, making sure that you are solving the actual pain points for the card holders, the people who we are providing these services to. And if you keep that at the heart of what you're doing, you will succeed, right?
We cannot be local in a global world.
Yes. Nacho, you had a quite a nice saying. Local.
Yeah. Go global, but think local.
I love that. I mean, that's going to be the tagline. Go global, think local. Love it. Now, for all of our regional directors and, for our panel, I want to say last words, right? So finish the sentence for me, please. To win in my region, the one thing fintechs and digital banks must understand about card programs is ... Now, I'm going to start with you.
So you have to design with intent, build with compliance, and localize with respect.
Love it. Nacho?
Yeah, I think you must understand from a card program is you're not issuing a card, a plastic, you're actually issuing an experience. So I think that the card is not a product, but it's really a conversation 24/7 with your client. And I think it's very important to understand that.
Absolutely. Julie?
Yeah, so I think a differentiated customer experience that really targets your customer segments. Yes. My two were at the beginning of their digital banking journey, and I asked them, why did you select that digital bank? And they said, saving costs, instant transfers to friends, but bar bills, strip bills, etc. And so I think delivering features and functionality that really do address your target market, very key.
Absolutely. Minha, over to you.
I think that they said it all. So I would want to add in that, so now, so like for them, to have a successful card program and, fintech want to do a lot of things, right? So to select the right technology partner so that work with them to develop their product to provide those experience so that you can focus on your core business.
Yeah, absolutely. When to find the right technology partner, when to build, when to buy, when to partner. Absolutely key decisions that banks and fintechs need to make upfront. Critical. Alejandro?
Everybody said pretty much everything, except I think working with a regulator doesn't mean going back. It means actually that the regulators are looking after what is going out there and they're taking care of our end users.
Absolutely. And again, in LAC, we're seeing the Argentinian regulators do just that.
Yeah.
Focus on what does the customer need? Let's pivot. Let's change. Let's meet the market where there's a need. Fantastic. And lastly, Alan, we'll start with you. What would you say?
Building a successful card program requires actually solving a real problem.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And I think that's the perfect way to end. So that's a wrap on this global edition of the Issuer Academy. A huge thank you to Anna, Minha, Nacho, Nauman, Julie, and Alejandro for showing us that global success in payments isn't just about one big solution. It's about getting the local details right. Catch you next time on the Issuer Academy. That wraps up today's episode of the Issuer Academy, Paymentology's podcast to innovate, scale, and provide impact. I hope you're leaving with fresh insights and actionable strategies to help you revolutionize your card programs and drive true impact in the world. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, please leave a review to help us reach more pioneers like you. Also, be sure to subscribe and follow us for more inspiring episodes and behind-the-scenes content from Paymentology. Until next time, I'm Merusha Naidu. Keep innovating, keep scaling, and keep striving to make an impact.